Yo, 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 it's your friend Dinner Dog, and in today's video, we're going to talk all about nimble decision making. There's a lot of cool things we can do, and it's very exploitable. It's kind of one of the reasons I like Nimble. I'm not a huge fan of just saying get bad and go all the time, because I think there's more to the game than that. But the amount of figuring out complexity chains and stuff like that is really fun. Like it's even more um, or what it does, what you can do in safe in a more repeatable manner. So let's explore that. So all we're going to talk about is logic and complexity. That's all that matters. If you understand how logic and complexity works in this preset, you're going to do very well. So you must understand these other videos before watching this one. You need to. The game state maybe is not as much, but I think it's important. You must understand logic and complexity. So turn this video off. Go to the other ones. You think I give a shit about the YouTube algorithm? Turn this off right now. In fact, do not like this video. The more likes I get for this video, I will be sad, all right? So I don't give a shit. Just go watch those other videos and then come back to this one, all right? All we care about is logic and complexity. So what is the logic and complexity of this preset? So we're going to start with these bad boys. Sorry for the potato quality of the images, my bad. And these are the only other available progression that isn't a Vlad relic, all right? So, which one of these matter the most? Which ones do we not care about? All that good stuff. How do the rings work? Let's explore it. So, I'm going to just level with you. The most important one is Jewel of Open. You want the Jewel of Open all the time. The and it's not for complexity, it's for logic. Because you have Bat and you have Jewel of Open, you no longer care about Echo of Bat at all. In fact, both Echo and Bat and Spike Breaker are completely useless to you. And if they are useful, you probably shouldn't be at the 300 series yet. Keep going and getting better. You don't want to have to rely on Echo of Bat. You don't want to have to rely on Spike Breaker. So we kind of don't want to see these, or we don't really care when we see these, and we really care when we get Jewel of Open, because we can go and get Spike Breaker check immediately, and we can even exploit Silver Ring check without mist. The rest of them are really not exploitable, unfortunately. So early Jewel Seeds are exploitable. Especially when we don't get Spike Breaker or whatchamacallit, Echo of Bat. Oh my god, I can't figure things out. Okay, so we've just looked at how to break logic, but here's an example of how the complexity chain can work in Nimble. So Nimble works on the idea that the minimum level of complexity is 6. The theoretical maximum is 8, and remember that a Vlad relic is complex or is progression, because 5 of them give you the end of the game, right? So 8 kind of sucks, right? Like, look at this, right? I gotta get the Jewel of Open, Holy Glasses, go to the second castle, and get missed, right? Like this, and then like do all this fetch quest. Or we can look at it this way and say that I have Jewel of Open and I'm going to skip everything and just get the last Vlad relic, right? Now, realistically, you're not going to do that because you hard need the Holy Glasses, and you need to pick up some Vlads along the way. But you're going to love when you see Jewel of Open, because you can say there's a lot of things I can probably skip if I get a Vlad relic down here. There's a little bit of risk that Spike Breaker was not intended to be in the logic chain or the complexity chain, and then it just happened to be a Vlad, so you can kind of get hosed that way. But it's not likely. Like, the odds of that are very low. Speaking of low odds, a progression chain of 8 is very unlikely. So you likely know it already, but the randomizer, when it's using complexity, is going to bias very heavily towards the minimum. If anything, I think it's going to look like this. You are just never going to get 7 and 8. Never. So don't worry about trying to figure out what level of complexity the seed is. Just assume it is 6. And what that means for you is that you're going to need at least like 5 levels of stuff to be able to access the final Vlad here, right? But I'd argue that counting really isn't a big deal in Nimble. Like, Mouse was right when he said that complexity is kind of a false prophet. Logic is the better prophet. We can just say, okay, I'm going to use Jewel of Open and just get this at the end, and then just find the rest of the Vlad relics on my way around. The I'd also like to point out how the rings work, or at least just to reinforce it. So complexity doesn't go up a level until you have something that opens something else in the game. So this ring here, you may have found it on level 1, you may have found it at level 3, you may have found both of them at level 5, although that's not possible here with Merman statue. But essentially, you really don't care when you get one ring, but it gives you a bit of confidence if you're going to start chasing, because you can say, okay, I'm not going to get screwed by, let's say, skipping a few areas and chasing complexity, because I know that I'm not going to miss the random ring, right? So let's look at this in a more realistic scenario here. Or actually, no, something else I need to explain first. So you see how if it's minimum of 6, which it's always going to be, all right, just assume that if you find a 7 or 8, first of all, you're probably wrong. Secondly, send it to me, because I'll eat my hat here, right? Like it's bad. The look at this here. Observe that on in order for 6 to work, there must be at least 2 levels with 2 pieces of progression. Or alternatively, 1 level with 3 levels of, or 3 items of complexity here, or 3 like items or relics of progression, sorry. This is the more exploitable piece of complexity than counting complexity. I'd argue you probably shouldn't count it. It's not likely to be useful in most situations. What is useful is building this chart in your mind and saying, okay, level 1, what does that mean? I'm going to go through the game to the clock room. I'm going to go up to All Rocks. I'm going to go to the keep, and then I'm going to go to the library. All of those checks in Nimble are level 1, because you can do them all with what you start with. All right. You don't count bat, leapstone, gravity boots at all in the chain. You start with them; they're not part of the chain at all. They just enable the chain. So if I do that route and I end up in the library and I have Jewel of Open, Spike Breaker, and whatchamacallit, Echo of Bat, then I know I now have a linear path to get to the final Vlad, at least in terms of obtaining progression items or relics on the same level. They'll never do it again. It can't. Mathematically, it's impossible, right? So that gives you then a bit more confidence, if you would, to start chasing complexity, especially in let's look at this scenario here. So we've started the game. I should have put a note up here. Obviously, you're going to check the whatchamacallit, this right here to begin with. Actually, we can fix it right now, just so there's no confusion. You're absolutely going to do that check right now at the beginning of the game. And then you're going to go through the lab. You're going to do all this stuff here. You're going to go down here to grab this. And then you are 100% going to make the clock rush. If you're not making the clock rush, there's problems, all right? We're going to go up through all rocks and all that stuff, do all these things. And then after doing the keep here, we're going to find ourselves in this scenario. We have Jewel of Open, Spike Breaker, Echo of Bat, and a ring. Where do we go next? If your answer is the library, you're probably wrong. You're wrong for 2 reasons. One, there could be Vlads over here, for sure, right? But we know there's no more progression items over here. There's only Vlads. It cannot be more progression. It can't even be the silver ring. Because if it's the silver ring over here, then now we have 4 pieces of progression on the same thing. And now we can't make the minimum of 6, right? So we don't need to count 6. We just need to know the concept of math, right? And how to get to 6. So you should be going down. 100%. You should never go to the library. Because if you go down, A, you're going to get your next step. And B, you only want to visit the library once ideally. So you might get a library card if you don't already have one, although don't fish for library cards, it's bad. The and you may find mist, and then you only need to go to the library once. And you might get the final Vlad relic at the bottom here, so you don't need to go to the library at all, right? Like, or potentially, although it's unlikely, but it could happen. The you recognizing this, and to an extent this here, right? That you are now on a linear path is extremely beneficial, especially if you have the rando ring. You can still do it without, but now you're taking risks, right? And to be fair, this is a randomizer. You're gonna have to take risks at some point. The it's just what is your level of comfort of risk, right? If you're in this situation here, where you have two pieces, the like, and you're at the keep, you could say, okay, well, there's a good chance there's nothing else here, right? And maybe you go down. I would say it's a risk. I wouldn't say it's a gamble. I don't think you're completely rolling the dice, but you're saying, okay, I can skip the library potentially. I can specifically exploit Jewel of Open to go to Spikebreaker, which may be very fruitful, right? And I'll go to library later, or if at all, right? The That's how you win at Nimble, is building this in your mind and then prioritizing areas that you can exploit with Jewel of Open, the and having the comfort to do that, especially if you get in this scenario, you have more than one piece of progression on one level, or even better, you have two pieces, and then you even have the rando ring is even better. Like at that point, it's not even a risk or a gamble at all. It's just hard understanding what's going on and not being left behind. So this chart here is what you need. The When you get into this scenario here, all right. There's a ton of scenarios to go through and stuff like that. We won't be able to go through them all here. If you have questions about anything that's come up for you in a run, please send them to me. I'd love to do follow-up videos on this. So if you're like, hey, what should I have done in this, or why did this happen, send it over to me. So anyways, let's just look at a couple of concepts then before we end this off. So always make the clock rush. If you're not making the clock rush, figure it out. I'll probably make a video about it, but you need to make the clock rush, all right? It would be very difficult to win without making it. It's just the ideal route. The Essentially what you're banking on if you don't make the clock rush is that you get missed somewhere else, and then you do all of that area with missed later, and then you can also check silvering at the same time, and then you're hoping that none of those checks have anything important, but you don't really want to bank on that, all right? So make the clock rush, get into the habit of being able to do it. If you can't, we need to figure it out. And the thing you probably need to figure out is item checks. You do not want to check items, all right? The only thing you want is money, right? And just because if the librarian has something, right? Which is fairly rare, right? Like if we think about most of the other presets, right? It's kind of like a what, like a 1 in 6 chance off the top of my head that the librarian has something useful. It may be less or more than that, so forgive me. I'm doing this in a moment, but because of what is available on the first level, like we can just go back to the map here, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 checks, right? Whereas in normal, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I probably missed one somewhere, right? Like the or maybe I didn't. No, I don't even think I did there, right? So like it's much more likely that the librarian's gonna have something in a normal game than it would be in Nimble, right? So you only care about money, and you very rarely actually need it. So in that game, that concept, like you don't want to check items. Like if you miss the clock rush by 10 seconds and you checked items, like you screwed up. Like you can't do it. Don't check items. Your game state is fantastic. You can beat Dracula immediately when you get a control to Alucard. You have that ability to do it handedly. You could probably one cycle Dracula with the equipment you start with, right? Items do not help you. The only thing that helps is a library card, and I recently figured out that like the chance of finding a library card from any like specific pot are probably 1%. Like it's not worth your time, especially during the clock rush. If you want to check items after the clock rush, be my guest. I don't think it's the greatest idea, but it's useful. But if you let's look at this perspective. You check items, you get a library card, and you miss the clock rush. Were you better or worse? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that, but I would imagine you're worse. But let's think about that. That's a good thought experiment. The the only thing that you really benefit from items is having a second throwable. But let's look at the odds, right? Like you're probably going to find a second throwable somewhere because there's so many of them that could be useful. The You may have started with a second throwable in your inventory. Well, you may have also start with a library card, although like the odds of that are pretty low. I should figure that out though. So that being said, like, don't worry about it. And if you do go to the library to check what the librarian has, there's so many throwables that are super cheap anyways, right? So it's not really a big deal. We want to prioritize breaking logic with Jewel of Open. That's the biggest piece you should be taking away from this video. The next piece should be recognizing how many progression items were obtained on the same complexity level. It is more powerful than counting complexity. It is the false profit to count. Don't worry about it. Just understand the chart and how it works. And then look at when you can say, I got 2 pieces of progression on the same level, or even better, I got 3 on the same level. Fantastic, right? You will be objectively faster if you can do that. Obviously, if you get the Rando ring, you can feel a bit better about chasing complexity, although it is a bit of a risk to do it. But again, you've got to take risks at some point, probably, right? The After you break logic and finish the chain, you should consider avoiding other higher complexity checks. So this is also risky, but you can absolutely win races by doing this. You could also lose races, but I think you're more likely to win than lose. So here's the thing, right? If I skip everything and I just get the last Vlad, like I don't know, at Spikebreaker, right? Do I really want to check what's behind the Merman statue? Because how it works is that there are, like, in the worst case scenario, I think there are 2 progression items or relics that can be bait. All of the rest of them have to have something. So if you're um, if you're checking Merman statue, you're saying to yourself, Merman was bait, but it also happened to have like one of the other relics randomly put there, right? Like the odds just aren't great. And you're kind of saying, okay, well, I broke complexity by going out of logic, but now I'm going to revisit all the steps anyways. The odds just aren't there most of the time. So, although there is a degree of risk, the likelihood is that if you've skipped progress, or if you've skipped complexity levels by getting what you believe is the final Vlad, you have to be confident that's the case. The And you go back and check things, you're 90% of the time you're gonna be wasting your time. So don't do it. I believe you'll win more races rather than lose by avoiding things that you've skipped. Obviously, like, you're not going to do that for like second castle. There's so many checks, right? But like the ones we're talking about are like the rings to check holy glasses, merman statue, even checking spike breaker. If you went out of logic at silver ring, for instance, and you got it there, right? The That, because it's a singular check, right? Missed to a degree, but there's 2 checks, so there's less likelihood. And obviously with Jewel of Open, the glasses, they open up so much that there's going to be stuff there for sure, right? Anyway, so you should definitely take that away as part of this video. Um, Lastly here, if you are in the second castle and you know you've obtained the maximum amount of progression items and relics because either you got two steps that had 2 pieces before, or you had 1 step that had 3 things before, or you got either of those combinations within the second castle. Let's say you got like 1 piece of progression, you get like Echo, and then you find Mist, right? And you already know you had 2 pieces before in another level. Then I would leave the second castle like right away as soon as possible. Obviously, like, you may want to consider some things around teleporters, but you generally want to leave. The you could stay in the second castle saying, well, there could be a Vlad here, and you very well could be right. There's probably a good chance that there are Vlads, but there's no guarantee there are Vlads. And unless you have the last one, you know there's stuff back in the first castle. And if that's the case, then you should go back to the first castle because you know you'll get something there. Where you could go through the rest of the second castle and get nothing. That is a possibility. Where that's not the possibility in the first castle. So yeah, you'll definitely want to open the All Rocks teleporter first, or the reverse All Rocks, I should say. With the only exception being that if you get, let's say you run into this situation here, all right? You know that there's nothing left in the first castle. Let's say like replace Spike Breaker with Holy Glasses, all right? So let's just remove it. Whoops. Well, I can't do it with the way I've got PowerPoint here. Actually, no, I can do this. All right. No, I can't. Oh my God. Come on, give it to me. Let's do this and then do this, okay? And just say that Holy Glasses is here, right? If you go to the second castle and at Darkwing Bat you get missed, you should go back immediately. There's no more progression in the second castle. There cannot be. And you know that there's progression back in the first castle, and that there could be Vlads there, whereas there's nothing guaranteed to be in the second castle. So that's how that works. The and yeah, you can win races this way as well. The You could argue that, well, if I go back to first castle and it's a jewel and it's a bit of a grind, yeah, but like the second castle, depending when you get the piece of progression, it can be a grind as well. Take context of your own situation into account, but generally speaking, this is the way. So, anyways, that was a whole bunch. Please ask questions and send scenarios. I'd love to go through them. I'd love to learn myself. And yeah, you need to understand this. If you can understand this chart or this one, you will be faster at Nimble. But you need to know how these things work, or more importantly, be able to be the clock rush before you approach any of this. And if you've gone to the end of this video and like you're still relatively new and you've been watching 200 levels, goddamn, you're probably in a worse place now because there's too many things to keep track of. Anyways, I probably should have said that earlier, but hey, here we are. All right, I gotta get going. So this has been Dinner Dog, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.